I know that it's probably going to be a very packed stadium. So, yeah, I'm sure it'll be really fun. That's Amanda Anisimova, world number 10, runner-up at 2 Grand Slam finals in the last 12 months, talking about a player she has never faced in her career, ahead of a match that hasn't even been played yet. And she isn't talking about the tennis. She's talking about the crowd she already knows is coming. 127 years. That's how long the Western and Southern Open has been played in Cincinnati, Ohio. In that entire span, this tournament has hosted Agassi at his absolute best, Sampras at his most ruthless, Serena Williams dismantling entire draws with no resistance, and Roger Federer winning this exact event 5 separate times across a decade of near total control on the surface. None of them, not one of those legends, ever forced a tournament to move a scheduled match onto a bigger court mid-event, because ticket demand for a player seated outside the top 10 had outgrown the venue assigned to her. That has never happened here. Not during the Serena years. Not during Federer's reign. It happened this summer in Toronto. Alex Eala did it. And now she's walking into the 3rd round of the biggest hardcourt event of the season, against a top 10 opponent she's never shared a court with in her career, in a tournament that already knows exactly what it's dealing with. The Lindner Family Tennis Center in Mason, Ohio is not a footnote on the tour calendar. It's one of the most decorated hardcourt venues in professional tennis, a $260 million facility that has staged some of the most consequential matches of the modern era. Stadium Court holds more than 11,000 seats. It has watched legends operate at the peak of their sport. This is not a venue that gets rattled by ordinary crowd noise. Eala arrives at this tournament seated 17th, sitting at a career-high world ranking of no 20. 3 weeks ago, she won her first ever Duta Tour title, coming back from a set down to beat world no. 3 Jessica Pegula in the Washington final. 4-6, 6-4, 6-0. That win alone pushed her into the top 20, for the first time the highest singles ranking any player from the Philippines has ever reached. Along the way this season, she has also beaten Iga Swiatek at Wimbledon, Elena Rybakina in Berlin, Elena Svitolina, and Naomi Osaka in that same Washington semifinal. Her career record against top 10 opponents now sits at 9 wins and 4 losses, with 7 of those wins coming in this single season. Waiting for her on the other side of the net in Cincinnati, Amanda Anisimova, 9th seed, runner-up at both Wimbledon and the US Open, last season 2 Grand Slam finals in a single year. A player who has ended plenty of bigger runs than this one before, and who is not walking into Mason, Ohio, to be a supporting character in someone else's story. Here's what actually happened earlier this summer, and it's the reason this particular 3rd round match is being talked about before a ball has even been struck. At the National Bank Open in Toronto, tournament director Carl Hale originally had Eala's opening match slotted into the grandstand court 2,800 seats, standard allocation for her seating at the time. Then the ticket requests started coming in. "We can't put her on there because she probably sold upwards of 5,000 tickets," Hale told Tennis Channel. The match was moved to center court before it was even played, a venue nearly double the size, reassigned purely because the original court couldn't hold the demand. That wasn't an isolated incident. Weeks earlier, at the Mubadala DC Open, tournament chairman Mark Ine described something close to a logistics problem hiding inside a good problem. "I will say, over the last month, the ticketing team says at least 80%, if not more, of the requests in this tournament are about, when is Alex Eala playing?" Ine said. "Honestly, I think it's more, and they just didn't want to say it was more. But they're, like, virtually all. It's not an exaggeration. That's actually what they tell me." Read that again. 80% by the tournament's own estimate, possibly higher, of every single ticket inquiry across an entire WTA 500 event, funneled toward one player's matches. Not the top seed, not the defending champion, a player who, at the time, wasn't even ranked inside the world's top 30. That's not garden variety fan enthusiasm showing up on a spreadsheet. That's a tournament quietly restructuring how it thinks about ticketing, staffing, and court assignment around a single athlete in real time, mid-event. So why does this keep happening city after city, tournament after tournament, regardless of seeding, regardless of surface, regardless of what stage of the draw she's actually reached? There's an established, deeply organized overseas Filipino community that follows Eala's schedule the way other sports fans follow a franchise. Estimates from the Philippine government and independent researchers place the number of Filipinos living and working outside the Philippines at somewhere between 10 and 12 million people spread across nearly every country Eala's tour visits during a season: the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, the Gulf states, Southeast Asia. Reporting from her tournaments this year has documented fans showing up with Philippine flags, some small and handheld, some full-size and unfurled during changeovers, and banners reading things like Salamat, Alex, and Game On. Alex at the National Bank Open specifically, tournament director Carl Hale went so far as to call Eala an absolute blessing to the sport of tennis and to the tournament itself. Eala doesn't fully take credit for any of this herself. Asked about the atmosphere she brings to a court after one of her wins this season, she reframed the question entirely. "I think the question should be rephrased. It's what it's like to be Filipino," she said, thanking her kababayan, her countrymen, for the energy in the stands. "It's not just headlines and hashtags anymore. The players who actually share locker rooms and practice courts with her are noticing, and they're saying so on the record." Unprompted, Naomi Osaka, four-time Grand Slam champion, was asked about it in Toronto after her own opening round win, and she didn't need much prompting to bring it up herself. "I think it's great. Like just now I finished my match and the little go-kart was taking me back. I looked at the practice court and it was completely full," Osaka said. "I was like, who's practicing right now? She didn't even go on court yet. And then I saw the Filipino flags and I was like, hum." She went further, praising how the fans conducted themselves. "They're so kind too, the fans. I think she's playing late tonight, and some of them were on my court cheering for me. I just felt really grateful." Osaka's conclusion was blunt about what it means for the sport itself. "It's so cool that she's building a new community. And obviously great for the tournament, because she sells a lot of tickets." Coco Gauff, who has played Eala twice this year, echoed the sentiment after her own Toronto win, saying she'd personally gained some fans from Eala's community just from sharing a draw with her, and that she'd continue supporting her. Then there's the comparison that actually went viral for reasons that had nothing to do with a scoreline. Former British No. 1 Greg Rusetsky, on his own podcast, put it this way: "There's only one other person that I can compare to her sort of star status. It's Serena Williams. Wherever Serena played, everybody was cheering and going for her, no matter where she plays, whether it's in America, whether it's in Europe. Now we are seeing this happening with Eala." The clip spread fast, and it drew real sharp pushback from Serena's own fan base, some of whom called the comparison premature fair criticism, given the two players' trophy cases aren't remotely close yet. But the fact that comparison is even being floated about a 21-year-old with a single WTA title by a former world No. 4 tells you something real about what's happening in the stands, entirely separate from what's happening on the scoreboard. And it's not just the crowd that's got people talking, it's the game itself holding up against it. Andy Roddick, the 2003 US Open champion, has been one of Eala's loudest advocates this season, calling her not scared to play the top players and pointing to her deceptively slow serve as the reason she keeps troubling elite opponents. "You can't take someone who doesn't have Eala's ball-striking ability and say, 'I'm going to serve slower against Iga Swiatek's welcome to your death.'" On the business side of it, Roddick has been just as direct. "Everyone in tennis should be cheering for her, right? I'm cheering for markets. Not all impacts are the same with players. Eala winning a slam is more than someone else winning a slam. That's just the way it works." This isn't a Toronto and Washington only story either. Eala's rise through the rankings this season has carried the same effect across nearly every leg of the calendar. Reporting on her season has tracked the same pattern building through the Australian Open and the Middle Eastern swing early in the year, before it hit a different gear entirely during the North American hardcourt stretch. The venues change, the languages in the crowd change, the mechanism doesn't. A tournament announces a draw, Eala's name is in it, and within hours the operational assumptions that venue built its ticketing plan around stop applying. Andy Roddick, who has emerged as one of the more outspoken voices defending Eala against critics who think the attention outpaces her results, put the broader point in stark terms on his own podcast. "This is a movement." He's pointed to the current era of women's tennis as unusually open, no single dominant favorite heading into the US Open, with Coco Gauff, Aryna Sabalenka, Elena Rybakina, Iga Swiatek, and Naomi Osaka all entering the tournament with a real case, and argued that in a field with that much competitive parity, a player who moves markets the way Eala does matters more to the sport commercially than her. Seeding alone would suggest. "Eala winning a slam is more than someone else winning a slam," he said. "That's just the way it works. We're lucky in tennis to have her." That's not a neutral, disinterested read on a talented young player. It's closer to an acknowledgement, from inside the sport, that the WTA's business model wasn't built around a scenario where a player ranked in the low to mid-20s can single-handedly determine how a tournament staffs security, prices resale inventory, and assigns courts weeks in advance. Every one of those adjustments so far Toronto's court swap. Washington's ticketing acknowledgement has happened reactively, days or hours after demand already outpaced the plan. Nobody has gotten ahead of it yet. Eala herself seems aware of exactly how much weight all of this carries. Ahead of her Cincinnati debut, she was asked what it's like to know what's waiting for her in the stands before she even steps on court. There are moments when it's heavy, there are moments when it's fun, she said. At the end of the day, I am also aware that it's a crazy experience. I'm just trying to take it all in. Now it's Anisimova's turn to find out what that actually feels like from the other side of the net. This is a genuinely dangerous matchup for Eala on paper, and nobody around the sport is pretending otherwise. Anisimova reached 2 straight Grand Slam finals last season. She's 24, she hits with real power, and she has ended bigger, more decorated runs than this one before. She is not walking into Mason, Ohio to play a supporting role in anyone else's story. She's there to reach the second week of a WTA 1000 event on her own terms. But she already knows exactly what she's walking into. Asked directly about facing Eala for the first time, she didn't dodge it. She's been having such an incredible season, incredible year, and a very great player with a lot of fans. So I'm really looking forward to that. I know that it's probably going to be a very packed stadium, so yeah, I'm sure it'll be really fun. Win or lose here, the underlying pattern doesn't reset. There's a potential quarterfinal waiting on the other side of this match. After that, there's New York, a US Open draw the entire sport will be watching, with the kind of attention it usually reserves for players much further along in their careers. Because as Roddick put it, none of this happens and no one cares if she's not winning stuff. So this is great. Professional tennis, as an industry, was built around a simple assumption: economic impact and crowd size scale, with ranking, seeding, and results. Eala is quietly breaking that assumption one tournament at a time, and the institutions running these events are adjusting after the fact, not ahead of it. Toronto had to physically move a match to a bigger court mid-tournament. Washington had to acknowledge that 4 out of every 5 ticket requests in an entire WTA 500 event were about one unseeded storyline. Cincinnati is watching in real time to see what it needs to do next, and whatever happens with Anisimova, it almost certainly won't be the last adjustment this season. What happens the week Eala actually wins one of the sport's biggest titles, not a 500-level event, but a Grand Slam or a Masters 1000, and the demand that's already outgrowing 2,800-seat courts multiplies again? Nobody running women's tennis has fully answered that yet. Eala versus Anisimova, 3rd round, Cincinnati, is just the next data point in a season that keeps producing the same question every single stop. Is the sport's infrastructure actually built for what's happening in the stands, or is it just catching up match by match? Even Swiatek, the player Eala beat at Wimbledon on her way into this stretch of form, has admitted the difficulty isn't just about atmosphere. Talking about facing Eala's unusual game, Swiatek said, "It was tougher mentally for me to accept these missed returns from the slow serves. Even though it's super slow, and people might think it's easy to return that, it's quite the opposite." That's a rare admission from a former world No. 1 and multiple Grand Slam champion, not about the crowd, but about the actual tennis being harder to solve than the ranking suggests. It's a reminder that whatever is happening in the stands in Cincinnati this week, it's layered on top of a player who is also genuinely getting better at the sport itself, match by match, opponent by opponent. That's playing out right now, in real time, in Mason, Ohio. Hit like and subscribe. This channel covers the stories where sports, economics, and community move faster than the people running the sport can keep up with them.